following is a special presentation of the HBO sports documentary series, Legends and Legacies.
This is live. Just past 2 o'clock in the afternoon in London. Overcast afternoon, a threat of rain, but I think the weather will hold up.
Wimbledon 1980, there was a special match. That's what people remember.
There's this sort of magic when our names are mentioned together.
For both me and John, everybody loved to see our rivalry, and so we always bring out the best from each other.
Here they come, the officials walking to their positions.
Bjorn indelibly inked my name into history, and hopefully to some degree I've done the same with him.
The photographers in a phalanx awaiting these two men, John McEnroe and the Emperor Bjorn. 15,000 people ready, 3,000 in standing room. And now they're coming out, and may the better man win.
He was eager, and you could see that on John, that this is going to be a great champion. This is where it all happened.
We brought tennis to a place that it wasn't at before.
That's a match I will remember the rest of my life.
Johnny McEnroe there. This is his first Wimbledon final. He's going to be a little nervous. Borg owns this court.
They walked out there that day to play a match. They'd leave behind a legend. Ever since that summer afternoon at Wimbledon, every great rivalry has been compared to McEnroe and Borg. Even if their story is as much about what could have been as what was.
When I was like 8-9 years old, I had two dreams. One, to be part of the Swedish Davis Cup team, and to play on Wimbledon center court.
When I was 8 years old, my father won a table tennis tournament. He could pick a lot of prizes, but I saw a tennis racket, and I told my father, please take the racket. So the next day I was up playing with my friends, and I loved it from the beginning. From the first ball I hit. My parents never pushed me. I just wanted to play tennis. It was simple as that.
Bjorn Rune Borg, the only child of middle-class working parents, was born and raised in Södertälje, an industrial town 20 miles outside of Stockholm. It was there, in a small apartment complex, that his passion for tennis grew.
I went out when I had free time and playing at this garage door all the time. I could stay there for 5 hours.
That dedication paid off when he gained the notice of the Swedish Tennis Federation in Stockholm.
He didn't have any winning strokes, but he had a footwork like hell.
When I came back to my paper in Stockholm, I said, I have seen a guy who can be one of the best players in the world. He was so eager to be good, you know.
He said, I have this in my mind, number one in the world. He was 11 years old.
But in his eagerness, there was little regard for sportsmanship.
He had quite a bad temper when he was young. He played some junior matches. Oh, he was not so good.
Cheating, swearing, throwing rackets, telling people to, It came to a point that the tennis club contacted my parents, and they decided that we had to suspend him for 6 months.
And then he changed his attitude so good. He didn't show anything. Ice Björn, they called him.
I was boiling inside, but I didn't say anything. And promised myself I'm not going to open my mouth on the tennis court because I loved it too much. I think that was the best lesson I could have.
Kommer du att satsa på tennisen?
Ja.
Soon, Sweden's Davis Cup captain Lennart Berglund became Borg's coach and mentor and selected the 15-year-old to play in the international competition.
We're a close fraternity in Sweden, all the players. And there was this little twerp coming in and everybody wondering, now who's he? And we soon learned to know who he was.
In 1973, Borg made his debut at Wimbledon, the game's most prestigious event, though he struggled to find his footing on a foreign surface.
Grass was a bit of a mystery to him, but he was determined to become the greatest player of all time. And to do that, you had to win at Wimbledon.
Borg was stopped in the quarterfinal, but along the way, his good looks and shy manner added a new dimension to his life. Tennis teen idol.
Sometimes some of the girls, they come up to my room and knock on the door. So Lennart said, "You're not supposed to be here. You have to go." I said to Lennart, "Come on." Be nice, Lennart.
This was the first tennis player who became a rock star, and we called it Borg Mania.
Well, I feel sorry for him because, I mean, he's only 18, and if he wants to relax, so many people who wants even just to touch him.
Really?
Yes.
He was like the Beatles, for God's sake, and he was just Björn.
Is there anybody in the world you would rather be?
Yeah, maybe sometimes I want to be a private person, so nobody knows you.
You always felt like you have to hide. We spent a lot of time in the hotel rooms. You felt like pushed up close to the wall. I sacrificed a lot of things, but I want to achieve my goals.
The following year, the 18-year-old became the youngest men's singles champion in French Open history. In 1975, he led Sweden to its first ever Davis Cup title. And then in 1976, Borg conquered the Wimbledon grass without dropping a single set in the tournament.
That's it.
He was 20 years old. Barely a decade after picking up his first racket, he'd already realized his childhood dreams.
That was something special. I knew I can play on the surface. So the one who's going to beat me has to play really, really well.
One of the pleasant surprises of the first week at Wimbledon has been the performance of 18-year-old John McEnroe, who through qualifying through 3 rounds has now reached the quarterfinals and finds himself in the second week of Wimbledon. I asked John how he felt about his chances.
I was trying to be cool.
Should I say something?
It was a wonderful story. He was a new face.
Do you like the attention?
Well, I don't really know. I guess so. I mean, it's good to, want to see people taking...
And he was so shy. He couldn't look you in the eye. But you could see, here's a prodigy.
John Patrick McEnroe Jr. was the eldest of Kay and John McEnroe Sr.'s 3 sons. He spent his childhood in Douglaston, Queens, a leafy middle-class suburb of New York City.
It seemed like the place that I wanted to get out of, and the goal was to get into Manhattan. That was when you made it big.
Making it big was what John McEnroe Sr. succeeded in doing, becoming a partner at a prominent Manhattan law firm.
My mom loves to tell the story of my dad going to law school, and there was 500 people, and he finished second, and so he comes home and says, "I finished second." Why didn't you finish first? I got a 98 on the test. How come you didn't get 100?
It was pretty clear. You did your homework, you worked hard, and you tried to be the best.
The McEnroes were members at the nearby Douglaston Club, which meant access to 5 tennis courts just a block away from their home.
And because it was so close, that's really the reason I started to play. I know my father wanted me to do it, and he did push me to do it. So I would say that it was the right amount in retrospect. At times it felt like it was too much.
At 12 years old, McEnroe was ranked 7th in the country in his age group. His parents looked to grow his talents even further at the highly regarded Port Washington Tennis Academy on Long Island.
I was taught really well. Tony Palafox and Harry Hopman instilled in me how mental the game was.
Harry Hopman, who ran the place, was a fabled disciplinarian. This is a man who trained Rod Laver and Ken Rosewall, and John just never liked that part of the program. He would play pretty much on his terms, and Mr. Hopman would let John slide on that.
I wasn't looking to cause trouble. I just was looking to get on the court. A waste of time would be the wrong word, but I didn't understand it at that time.
It's almost as though he didn't want to break him. He knew that John was different from everybody else.
If I keep going the same thing, he will get bored and start making mistakes, and then he will explode. He's very smart, and he had a good touch.
I like to be aggressive. If you cower at some level, that people are just going to be all over you.
He wasn't that big, but good placement.
He was a runt. You know, his nickname was Runt. He was small.
One of the pros was talking about this kid, McEnroe, 12-year-old kid. And I was 16 at the time, and we said, all right, fine, let's set up a bet, and I will whip him. We played 5 sets. I didn't win one of them.
And tennis took on a new kind of appeal when he got a job as a U.S. Open ball boy and earned an up-close look at an emerging phenom.
I've never seen a tennis player look like this. He had this sort of perfect Viking godlike look, and I certainly wanted to get the same type of things that he seemed to be getting, which was a lot of interest and a lot of girls. It was like, whoa, being a tennis player is really cool.
He spent his high school years at the prestigious Trinity School in Manhattan, a volatile prodigy, coming to terms with the game that suited him best.
I still wanted to play other sports. I'd like to tell you that I'd be a better soccer player. I got benched a couple times because of these sort of outbursts. I go to the coach, why are we doing this? And then sit me down because how dare I rebel against authority? The hell with it, I don't want to deal with coaches and I don't want to deal with other players. I don't want to deal with anyone if they're going to be sort of on a different wavelength than me. And so that maybe pushed me more towards tennis a little bit.
In the summer of 1977, the 18-year-old skipped his high school graduation to play junior tennis in Europe. A few weeks into his trip, John McEnroe was playing in the men's quarterfinals at Wimbledon.
And he came out and he was just, whoa, who's this guy? He just went from level 3 to level 10. It's just in one jump.
I had a respect for pros. It was just that once you got on the court, if this guy's not as good as I am, that's too bad.
And perhaps just as surprising as his success was his petulance.
I tried to snap my racket when I lost the second set. Why are people bullying me if I try to break my racket? So when that happened, I thought, okay, let me just see what happens if I kick it. That provokes a reaction.
He was faced with this raft of people at Wimbledon who expected a certain standard of decorum, and he didn't recognize any of that.
You're quite sure?
7-all.
Okay. The ball was so far in. You see it in?
His behavior was eccentric to the point of being anguished. He sought perfection from his own tennis, and everybody around him had better be in a perfect mode as well.
His life is flowing out of him like a river, and you can just read the truth right in what you're seeing. People were just riveted by him.
I read a lot about Wimbledon before I came here, and most of it I heard was good, but I think the crowds are get a little out of hand.
Here came a son of anarchy that nobody was prepared for. It was Hurricane John.
The unknown qualifier emerged as the youngest semi-finalist in Wimbledon history before his storybook run ended at the hands of the ferocious Jimmy Connors.
Puts a little more pressure on when all of a sudden the old man, you can do it. Oh, I'm playing Jimmy Connors, okay. Connors is not the friendliest of guys, especially when you're about to play him. He beat me before I walked on the court, I think. It just seemed like it was a bit all too overwhelming.
It would be Connors who went on to face the defending champion in the final. And for the second straight year, it was Bjorn Borg who would raise the Wimbledon trophy. A year later, after winning an NCAA championship as a freshman at Stanford University, McEnroe decided a professional career could wait no longer.
I wasn't totally convinced that this was the path I would have chosen had I been able to choose anything I wanted. I at least was smart enough to realize that this is like a golden opportunity. You could make money, you could be an athlete. So I thought, I got to make the most of this.
'78, we play first time in Stockholm. I knew it's going to be a difficult match.
For me, it's the biggest match of my life because it's him.
5 months after turning pro, McEnroe met Borg for the first time in the semifinals of the Stockholm Open. Though it was the young American who made himself at home.
It was a very, very fast court, lightning quick, perfect for John. horrible for Bjorn.
I saw his talent, of course. He had so much for free. He doesn't need to practice so hard as Bjorn to make those strokes.
He played very, very aggressive, moving into the net very fast. He beat me in straight sets.
The semis of Stockholm, big deal, right? He's going to try to downplay it, but for me, it was a huge step up.
After the match, we didn't say too much. And actually, that was the first time I lost to a younger player.
After that match, we went out in Stockholm and it got to be about 4 o'clock. And I said, hey, Junior, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. He said, I'm only going to beat Bjorn Borg for the first time once in my life. I'm going to celebrate.
And it suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't won the tournament yet.
We booked a practice court the next day before I was flying to London, and he was hopeless. Got back to London, picked up the paper, McEnroe defeats Gullikson 6-2, 6-2. That was his gift.
Back stateside a few months later, McEnroe unwittingly won something else from Borg, his affection.
The next matches we played was in Richmond, Virginia. He was serving for the match, and I hit like 4 or 5 unbelievable returns. And then I ended up winning the match. John was sitting over there. He was going like this. You know, this is the way John sits when he loses a match. We went back to the hotel. Lennart forgot the tennis bag. So he went back to the stadium. And who is sitting there, like 1 hour later? John. Next week we played in New Orleans. That was the first time he was going completely berserk. It was like maybe some mental patient, you know, they released or whatever.
I guess that I was sort of acting a little crazy and just getting all excited, which was sort of par for the course. I believe it was about 5-all in the third set.
Then I told John, please, John, come.
And then I remember thinking, oh my God, he's going to tell me I'm the biggest asshole that ever lived. And I just can't handle this. Why did I do this?
That look he gave me, what the hell you want? And I said to John, please, come to the net.
I mean, I came up and I was ready just to be blasted. And then he just said,
listen, this is a game. Relax, take it easy.
And I was like, I was completely floored. I didn't know what to even think. At first I was, wait a minute, is he trying to do something to throw me off here?
Inside I was laughing. He looked at me with those eyes.
And then I thought, well, maybe he's just actually saying something that's nice. And it actually relaxed me, which is probably not what he wanted to happen. Or maybe he did.
Maybe he learned something. I felt sorry for him in a way.
What I took from it was that he had accepted me, and that I could look at any other player, and if they said anything to me, I could just say, well, Bjorn said it's okay. The least I could do was to try a little harder when I was playing him. So I had to be on my best behavior, plus I respected him.
I ended up losing the match. I knew that this is going to be a great champion. I knew I was going to play him many more times. I liked this guy from the beginning.
The chemistry between the American and the Swede was an emerging piece of a broader storyline in the sport. With a deep field of players boasting personality and style, a tennis boom was underway. But no star was bigger than Borg's, whose 4th straight Wimbledon championship, along with 4 French Open titles, made him the game's undisputed king.
This guy did everything just right. He didn't say a word.
Do you have any special feelings when it comes to playing in your old home country?
No, no feelings at all.
You had this laconic, almost like a Western gunslinger type of mentality where he never seemed to feel obliged to say anything, but was really, really dangerous.
He had created a whole new view of the game. Bjorn Borg had made tennis cool, with an allure that had gone global.
He was, at that time, one of the most well-known people in the world. He was so popular. Everybody liked him. He just looked cool on the court.
I think everyone wanted to look like Bjorn. Certainly, he had the cool clothes and the sweet headband and the great locks.
I mean, I had long hair, and I mean, you have to look perfect, you know.
I used to always comb it because my parents wanted me to, especially my mom, wear it pretty short. But as I got into high school, I wanted to wear it longer because it's the 70s.
It took like 5 minutes to fix your hair. I mean, it was more natural to have a headband.
But mine started like frizzing too much. So while I was desperate to have the hair like Bjorn, it sort of went out like Bozo the Clown more.
McEnroe neither looked like Borg nor trained like him. No one did.
I think the strongest part of my game was the mental and physical strength I had. You know, I've never been tired in a tennis match.
I'm like the best player for 2 hours. If it gets past 2 hours, then my odds start dropping.
Borg's facility to practice became the point of myth. John McEnroe found that playing doubles was a more enjoyable way to practice than going out and hitting ball after ball after ball after ball.
Lazy is not the right word. I don't think I am lazy, but perhaps didn't love the training.
Borg had this incredibly regimented preparation. He'd sleep for 10 hours a night at a certain temperature, naked, and they'd always drive the same route to the tournament. He sat in the same chair. He had the same 2 towels next to him. He'd lay out 50 rackets, and he'd test the tension of each in sort of perfect musical pitch. And he'd select the rackets for each match.
My strings were a lot looser, so therefore I used my racket as a slingshot. He was like a battering ram, you know, he's just boom. It was the opposite of feel. It was bludgeoning it. He was out of my league, and my job was to get somewhere in the same vicinity of where he was already at.
And just a little more than a year after joining the tour full-time, McEnroe did just that, vaulting into the top 5 and then winning the U.S. Open.
By the end of '79, at least, I felt like I was a legitimate rival.
But at Wimbledon, as Borg continued to chalk up titles, McEnroe had had little success following his startling 1977 debut. He'd won just 3 matches in 2 years.
It's not like the drum beat going into Wimbledon was, oh, we're finally going to get a Borg-McEnroe final. There was no indication that John was going to be up to the circumstances of the occasion.
It was more of a struggle than I thought it would be to better my first result. I was like, I'm going to show each and every one of them.
McEnroe stormed to the semifinals, setting up another face-off with Jimmy Connors for the right to battle the 4-time defending champion Borg for the title. And this time, McEnroe was not intimidated by his opponent or his surroundings.
Keep your mouth shut out here.
It wasn't like he was playing some guy that you never heard of.
And the final pairing was established. Top seed Bjorn Borg against number 2 seed John McEnroe.
He had to beat Connors to get to Borg.
This is live. Overcast afternoon, a threat of rain, but I think the weather will hold up.
It made terrific television, and of course, Borg and McEnroe couldn't be topped.
To walk on the center court and play the final. I mean, I looked forward to play John.
There's Leo, the locker room man.
I remember that this is where I'd always wanted to be.
Listen to those boos.
They're booing John McEnroe. That is astounding.
The day before, he'd played the very tempestuous semi-final against Jimmy Connors, and the British public remembered it.
This is not exactly an ultimate fighting crowd there. This is center court, Wimbledon, All England club. They booed him.
So what? That's just all the more incentive to shut him down.
Set point.
Anytime you beat a guy as good as Bjorn Borg 6-1, you're thinking, this is too good to be true.
If you don't feel like you're into the match, you need to hit few returns to tell him, soon I'm going to break you.
It became apparent that I was in this major fight. I was going to have a tough time staying with him.
I was so much stronger than him in the third set.
The Swede won the third set convincingly. And then, a familiar feeling crept over center court. Bjorn Borg on the brink of yet another Wimbledon title.
So here it is, championship point, two of them.
By that stage, we're all thinking, great shot, John. You'll have your time. It's not going to be this afternoon. What time's deadlines?
I felt like I had to put all my focus into staying alive at that point. I mean, clearly I was on the ropes.
But McEnroe managed to force the set to a tiebreaker. First to 7 points by a 2-point margin wins. And a few moments later, Borg once again was in position to do just that.
This is a third championship point. And they will change ends again. No! John McEnroe says no and scores his first knockdown. 7 points all.
It really had become like a heavyweight fight. There was an element that this kid from New York, who'd been pissing them off, had given them this day.
As tired as I was, the electricity that I felt in that small stadium, that kept me going.
I think he felt more pressure, and I hit more returns back, and mentally, psychologically, you hurt the other person in a way.
I thought it was over. He hit an incredible shot. Now what? Now I got to get up and figure out what to do again.
McEnroe again says no.
McEnroe's facing championship point 5 times in that tiebreak, and he never blinked. It was extraordinary.
It was excruciating. It was like watching somebody climb a mountain, step after step. So it kept on going.
15 all, Borg trying to take himself to another match point. McEnroe! Borg will serve.
The least time I ever wanted to quit in my life was that tiebreaker.
It was the worst moment I felt as a tennis player.
18 points to 16 for Johnny McEnroe.
I mean, he's got it. I mean, how can you lose a match after you win a tiebreak like that?
The amazing thing with Borg, his face was a blank sheet of paper, not a flutter of an eyelid.
I was very pissed off. It felt like I was sitting there for like 10 minutes on the chair.
We did think we might be seeing something like the end of the Borg era.
I was thinking about the tiebreaker, the whole first game.
This is it. I got him. He's going to give in.
I was down love 30, and if John breaks me there, he's going to end up winning the match.
Chalk, 15-30.
I don't know why, what happened, but I started to be very relaxed in the fifth set.
And Borg recovers from love 30.
And to my utter amazement, he actually served even better in the fifth set.
8.
By the time it got to be 4-all, 5-all, 6-all, I was starting to get this glazed sort of feeling in my eyes. I don't know how I'm going to win this now.
Ooh! He was like a fighter who just kept coming. He should have been wobbled. This was the shining example of Borg's athletic character.
15-40. 2 championship points.
To lose the fourth set, that was the worst moment. And 1 set later was my best moment in my life as a tennis player.
I was absolutely disgusted that I didn't win that match. It was a giveaway, as far as I was concerned. Thankfully, it was a historical match.
The champion of champions, Bjorn Borg, and challenged by the U.S. champion, who has finally won Great Britain, if not the title.
As much as John likes to put out there that, you know, he doesn't care what anybody thinks, I mean, we all do. And I think after that match, he gained an awful lot more respect.
But it wasn't just me, it was both of us. In a way, I love every minute of that. The fact that I can always share this with Bjorn.
That's a match I will remember the rest of my life. For both me and John, people coming up and they talk about the tiebreaker. That's what people remember.
It almost became like urban legend. Did you hear about the tiebreaker? Did you see the tiebreaker? And Borg McEnroe had been joined.
Did you think at all you would lose?
Yeah, I thought so. Actually, I thought when I lost the fourth set, I thought I would lose the match.
You did?
Yeah.
Borg climbed the mountain and planted the flag on the top of Everest that afternoon, but knew that McEnroe wasn't going to go away.
Did you get as many people talking about this match we played as I do?
Yeah, all the time.
I mean, are there any people that actually remember you losing that match? Or is that just me? Hoping.
A few weeks after Wimbledon, life got even better for Borg. He married his longtime girlfriend, Mariana. Then summer's end offered him a chance for the perfect finish, a long-sought U.S. Open title. But when he reached the final and found McEnroe there again, Borg quickly discovered his adversary's resilience had only hardened since Wimbledon.
Great point. And Borg has not looked sharp. Really, he's looked very tentative.
McEnroe took the first 2 sets. Borg hung in to even the match.
I bet you that at 2 sets all, he was thinking he was going to win his first Open.
Of course I wanted to win the Open, because it's one of the biggest tournaments in the world.
He got a little tight, and then all of a sudden it was a different story. That was my proudest win in the sense that I showed people that I had a lot more going for me than just some artistry with my racket, that I had some toughness.
They played 55 games in the Wimbledon final. They played 55 games in the US Open final. And this time John gets him 6-4 in the fifth. Nothing was ever going to be the same for him after that. And he knows that he's a part of something special.
McEnroe Borg had become the game's defining rivalry. And as 1981 dawned, the tennis world was only eager for more.
You have a great match between the number 1 and 2 players in the world.
But at the Masters in New York in February, the match was interrupted when the world number 1 uncharacteristically lost his cool.
For him to be exasperated by one line call at this point of his life, not quite sure why that happened, what caused him to implode.
Borg is going to be defaulted in this match. I've never seen this in my life.
While the outburst raised rare questions about the Swede's state of mind, he was able to overcome it on his way to victory. 5 months later, they arrived back at Wimbledon with all eyes on another meeting in the final. Borg going for a remarkable 6th consecutive title. McEnroe still hunting for his first. And the American didn't carry his side of the burden easily.
I made it about as difficult as possible. Not that far into the first match.
You cannot be serious! That ball was on the line! Chalk flew up!
You know, my dad would say, "God damn it, John, do you have to do that?" The weird thing about my dad is that even though he gets mad, he still has like a weird pride about it. There's always that sense of, why are you doing that? But yeah, go do it again. You know, stick it to him again.
You guys are the absolute pits of the world, you know that? We're not going to have a point taken away because this guy's an incompetent fool, you know that?
His road through the draw was noisy and defiant, and by the semis, it appeared the only obstacle to another berth against Borg in the final was his temper.
I rather hoped that the semi-final, because of the occasion, would go nice and smoothly. But the first incident, he shouted to the heavens,
"Screwed because it umpires in his place!"
And for that he received a warning. It was later on when he looked across the court at me and said,
"You're a disgrace to mankind."
It was clearly abusive, it wasn't obscene, and so I gave him a penalty point.
Mr. McEnroe, first penalty point.
At the time, he came to me and said,
I wasn't even talking to you, umpire. I was talking to myself.
But I didn't accept this.
I'd like the referee brought out, please, before you call the score. What did I say, umpire? Tell me. Please tell me. Please tell me.
It wasn't quite as simple to dismiss me, especially as I got better, as there's less they can do.
Any goodwill McEnroe had earned the year before appeared to be gone. He had fully emerged as a tennis anti-hero, an outlaw whose lack of control on the court was eclipsing his remarkable control with the racket.
This was tennis's punk, this was the super brat, this was the guy who made sensational headlines, and he figured, well, I better live up to my role.
Somehow John, the kid from Douglaston, the kid from Trinity, convinced that element that he'd grown up in the roughest neighborhood on the Lower East Side. And it was a magnificent imagining